Hey everybody, how's it going? It's me, Jacob. Today in this video, this is part one. There's probably going to be two parts, I hope. I'm building a gasoline recycling machine. And what that actually is it's basically just a big filter. So there's going to be a big storage tank. It's going to hold all the waste gasoline. And then that's going to allow the water and the gasoline to separate over time due to gravity. And then that's going to get plumbed through a whole bunch of filters, water separator filters, paper filters, steel filters, and then it's going to go out and then into the jerry can. So basically you'll fill this up with waste gas and then you'll let it sit over time. You'll skim the gasoline off of the water that's going to go to the bottom, and then you're going to filter that out, put it into a jerry can, and then you'll drain the sump from that watery gas and deal with that individually. The waste gasoline I've been getting from a local small engine clinic. It's cheap insurance for them to just drain the tanks of all the stuff they're working on, whether it's a quad, whether it's a snowmobile, whether it's a snowblower, a Sea-Doo, whatever it is. Most of these things sit over the season, whether that's winter or summer. And it sits for so long that you might as well just not mess with any of the gas in the tank. Just get rid of it. But the problem is, how do you get rid of it? The answer is me. I put it in my car. So my original plan, I drew it on a piece of paper. It seemed like a really good idea at the time. Again, I'm recording this in the future of this video, like that. I'm talking past tense. I've already recorded everything. But at first, at the outset, I designed it so that it would be a vertical stand-up tank with a funnel filter system on top. So you'd fill it from the top, it would go through a mesh strainer, and then it would dump into the main basin, and then you'd close the top, and then add a little air line on there and pressurize it to 5 to 8 psi with compressed air, and then you'd open a valve on the bottom, which would run up to a clear line going to the top as a fuel level gauge, and also for transferring fuel from the bottom up to the top through a series of filters, and then out an outlet. So basically you just compress air, it would push the fuel down and then up and then through the filters and out. And that seemed like a really, really good idea. If you're a smart person and you're watching this, you'll realize that's not a good idea, but for the sake of the chronology of the video, I'm not going to explain why right now. So anyways, under the assumption that that is a good idea, here's the video of me building it.
I got a big tank right here. This will do the job.
I grabbed this big water tank from a trailer in the corner of the yard. If you're not already familiar with my videos, and if you're new here, I like to try and build everything out of junk, or as close to junk as I can. Most of the stuff I build is free, and the parts that I do buy, I try and cheap out as much as possible. But I don't make junk though, like I don't just make something that'll fall apart. I usually make it pretty tough. This bottom portion of the water tank, I'm going to cut it, shorten it, and then I'm going to flip the bottom inside out so it can better handle pressure. This piece here is going to serve as our airtight cap for filling the tank. The store that I buy MIG wire from locally, for some reason, they never really had the bigger reels. So I've always been using the smaller reels. And then recently, started bringing in the bigger reels. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try it out. But for whatever reason, my welder just wouldn't run them. And it was past closing time. So I had to use flux core for most of this build. However, I do find flux core works really well for welding galvanized stuff. I had to do some airtight / watertight seals. I was kind of worried about it. But then again, it actually worked out pretty good. And it held. I was pretty surprised. Here you can see that strainer that I fitted up inside the propane tank housing. I put a coroplast piece that I cut out to fit on top of there to prevent spatter from burning through the mesh, and then I fit that in place with this heavy weight on top, and then I just tacked everything in place. You just keep careful, even tacks. If you burn too much, you go right through, and if you don't burn enough, you don't weld it. This plug was so seized. None of my tools were working, so I had to heat the hell out of it and grab this. This is like the biggest wrench that I own. And that was the only thing that was able to turn that. So I guess sometimes you really do need this giant wrench. It's actually very clean in there. Dumped everything out. All the spatter and everything. So that works out pretty good. This flange is not perfectly flat, which I'm not a big fan of, but I got it off of an old bladder tank for a water system. Had a rubber seal inside of it, big bag. Looks like a propane tank, but it's blue and a bit smaller. Cut it off of that. So now that I look at it, I think it's a bit too big for what I'm going to actually be doing, but oh well. I would like this to be able to both filter and store long term. The longer I can store it and the more I can allow sediment to lower to the bottom, the better. And the more I can store it safely, sealed up without risk of explosion, the better. Speaking of explosion, I changed the design. You may have noticed that I had cut this out and I was going to have this all vertically oriented in one column. I ended up welding that back in and flipping the main tank horizontally. The reason for that is that I had to change my plans because my girlfriend and a couple other people educated me. Like I said, I'm a little bit retarded. So what they explained was that if I'm going to pump in compressed air into the fuel like I was planning, that would actually risk atomizing the whole mixture, creating this volatile air-fuel mixture that could be ignited with something as simple as a static shock from your clothing. Something like friction could ignite this whole thing and kill everybody. I don't want that to happen. It would probably flow a lot better and faster with compressed air, but for the safety risk of that and the fact that I need it to be dual purpose for motor oil and bad gasoline. This is Jacob from the future checking in. I'm not going to make the machine dual purpose for motor oil and gasoline. It's usually okay if you have a little bit of two-stroke oil in there, as that's designed to be burned in the combustion chamber. Usually it's ashless, and the worst that it does is it drops the octane level of the fuel. Used motor oil is not supposed to go in gasoline. That's fairly self-explanatory. There's all kind of chips and crap in there. I'm not going to do that. That's dumb. I'm just going to go back to gravity feed, which is crappy, but it is what it is. I don't want to explode and die. I don't want to kill anybody else. Insurance is not going to cover me exploding my shop. So there you go. So you may be thinking, gee, this guy sure wears a lot of PPE. At least I hope you think that. There's a good reason for it. God gives me his weirdest fucking injuries. I don't mean to cuss so much, but it really just pisses me off. I was drilling this out again to try and redo it because I tapped them wrong. So I'm holding it like this. And for whatever reason, this drill bit's jammed in there and I got it on the lowest speed. This thing comes around and smashes me in the fucking face with this battery. Hard, like being punched in the side of the skull. And I'm like, ah, you piece of crap. And I started doing it again, and then it pulled my arm into this and then shaved a whole layer of my skin off on this burn on my arm. And I'm like, oh my God. And right now, it's pulling on that bit so hard, I think it's actually tearing it apart. So I don't know what the fuck I did wrong while drilling, but this has never happened to me in my life. So I'm gonna see if I can get this out of here. Like, look at this. Oh my God. Okay, let's see if we can get this out. I don't fucking know. I don't fucking know. Makes me lose my cool. I don't care. That's valid. Future Jacob here. That's not valid. Look at this. I feel bad for this drill. I hope I didn't fucking... Oh well, if it breaks, I'll buy a new one. But, like, what the hell? What the hell, man? I've never had that happen while drilling a hole in my life. On my drill press, on this, never had it happen. Like, these drill bits are sharp too. That's insane. So these threads were buggered, the threads that I did in the first place, and it was really hard to tap them. So I figured maybe it was the previous threads from the hex nuts that I used as bungs. Maybe the previous threads were kind of messing around with the current thread tap. So anyways, I filled them in with weld, and then I went over it, drilled it out again, and then I tried to use another thread tap there to try and tap them again. It worked a bit better, but it was still very challenging to do, and it didn't work out well. The threads are like super buggered. So I don't know. The hex nuts that I used, I think maybe they're grade 8 or maybe there's some kind of hardened steel, and they must be just a bit harder or the same hardness as my drill bits and my thread tap. So I figured that that's why it's so hard to tap them. That's why the threads in them are super brittle and very like cracky and everything. And that's why it's just yanking my freaking drill bits right out of my hand and smashing it into my head. So anyways, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna try and make them off the thing. I'm gonna take this big shaft right here, cut it into 2 pieces, take them in my drill press, and then try and drill them out and thread them, and then weld them onto the thing. And then if it warps the threads or anything, I should be able to just run the thread tap through there as a sort of chaser. I think that'll work better. Hello, me again. We're just gonna skip this part. That rod is hardened. I should have looked at the surface finish. I failed yet again, wrecked some drill bits, wrecked a tap. We're not gonna talk about it. So sadly, it took me all day, but I managed to get it to work. I ended up just using my drill press and this piece of flat metal just because I was dead certain that it was soft. All the stuff I was using, it ended up being like air hardening steel, so that's on me, I guess. Anyways, I sharpened up my bits, messed around with my drill press, and now we got a proper fit. Took all day, but sometimes you lose, so whatever. So this one's a fucking cunt, but this one worked out okay. I guess they're just not supposed to cook them so much when you weld them, but whatever. Had a long day. I'm at a high stress level. So let's see here. Yeah, like that. Oh. Uh-oh. Oh, right. I'm stupid. Look at that. I forgot to hook up the line for the level. Right now the fuel is about half. So 2 jerry cans and a little bit of water jug, half. So this thing could store quite a bit of fuel. And if you want to use this as an overflow capacity, quite a bit of fuel. So right now, I opened the line up and then ran some pressurized air through it. Not much water left. This level is actually with the compressed air, but I added about that much. Just estimating, which is kind of dangerous, but I wanted to see if I can hear or see any pinhole leaks. I don't see any. I don't hear any. I think I got everything. The process of getting everything was pretty funny. I basically just turned the voltage up a bit on my welder and then just kind of went to town. If I seen water, I would start outside of it and then use the heat to kind of steam it and then work over it. But it was a bit hard to see and there's a lot of spatter, so it was kind of tricky. Sometimes you could rely on the air, but for the most part it was the water that you kind of look for. Sometimes you really chase it. I started up here and I moved all the way down here because it would seep out of every little pinhole in the welds. But now, I think it's all sealed. How much pressure are we dealing with? Yeah. So here it is, filled to the brim with gasoline. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jerry cans full of gas. That fills it up right to the top. So that's pretty good. So this portion of the video, I kind of record a lot less and I have a lot less of me talking. That's just because I share the shop with my dad. That should be more clear in my videos. It's not my shop, it's my dad's. He's the one who built it. I help pay for the bills and everything, and I get to use it for all kinds of stuff, so I'm very thankful for that. But I did want to make that clear. Anyways, I'm not talking in this portion. I'm building the frame. The frame I just came up with on the fly. It's much like a hand truck. It's a two-wheel dolly frame. You tip it back to move it, and when it's not moving, it's sitting on the two wheels and then two rubber pads at the corner of that base there. I offset the tank slightly off center, so it's putting most of its weight onto the base and not just the wheels. That'll kind of split the load on the wheels versus the base. The frame tubing is actually the result of me getting freaked out, like you seen earlier. We were watching this dog for my auntie, and the dog was kind of stupid. So there's this metal thing in the yard that my sister used to use to do little ballerina tricks and everything, this steel frame thing. And the dog would get his cable or his collar or whatever hung up on it, his leash. He'd get so hung up on it, he'd choke himself, and then he'd start screaming. And then you'd have to go over there and free him like 3 times a day, every single day. So I had enough of it. I freed him from there, started yelling, and then I just grabbed that metal thing and went, fuck! And then I just ripped that thing right out of the ground and then pulled it to the shop and then just threw it on the ground like the Hulk. And then a couple months later, while I'm making this video, I decided, hey, I'm going to cut that thing up and make a frame out of it. So, yeah, that's what I did. The angles I cut by hand, just filed everything up and then just welded everything up. I switched over to flux core wire, if you may have noticed. I find that it welds up the galvanized steel easier, although I really shouldn't be welding galvanized steel, but I mean, hey, it's free. So I just wear my respirator, I turn the fan on, I open the big door, and as soon as I'm done welding or any time between, I try to go stand outside. So I'm just doing another leak inspection. I pressurized it lightly with the blowgun again, all sealed up and full to this level, full of water. I don't hear any leaks. I don't see any leaks. So far it's looking good. I blew through and into the tank a bit when I was welding these up, so I was worried that they'd leak and piss out some water, but it looks like I'm worrying over nothing. So out of curiosity, I pulled the plug out for the sump drain just to see what would happen. Cool. I did this when it was full of water, which was a really terrible idea. You can't stop it, so I flooded the shop. Come here. There's our rear axle. Take it from the old rig. So this rear axle assembly is aluminum with steel inserts. It comes off of a hoverboard frame. It was sitting in the back of our shed for years. If you don't remember what a hoverboard is, it's not like Back to the Future. It's what those fluoride drinking children in 2016 would ride around on while flicking a fidget spinner. That little thing. It was supposed to attach to it. So I don't know how much quality that is. I mean, most kids on a hoverboard are probably 375 pounds. So I figured it could probably hold the weight of the assembly. I wasn't sure though, so I decided to weigh the whole tank and frame and everything just to get a rough idea. 258.4. So 258 minus my body weight with my clothes on is about 160. It looks like it's going to be about 98 pounds or around there. So 298 with all the gas in it should hold about 200 pounds of fuel, just guesstimating. It's going to be just below 300 pounds of weight on those wheels. That is quite a bit. So I could reuse this aluminum axle here. It has these little steel inserts that are riveted and bolted in. That's okay. I don't quite like that, but it works. These would be wider than the overall machine. I don't know if that's needed though, because I mean, it's pretty stable. Slip my fingers. It's pretty stable. And when it's loaded with fuel, it's a different story too. But this needs to be accounted for a bit. So I could take this axle, take these little inserts out, and then weld them up to a piece of square tubing or round tubing or whatever, make a shorter axle. take these from out here to behind here, and then that'll put them out further back to resist falling backward. It's already very, very good, but we just get a little bit more backwards resistance. I don't know how that'll fare for working like a dolly though, so we'll have to see. So in the end, I managed to get the axle pretty darn straight, but there is a little bit of flex in it. But it was acceptable. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a dolly. In reality, I'm pretty neurotic with these kind of things, and now that I have an eye for, like, you know, when something's out of alignment, it seems like everything's out of alignment. So I just get really, really stressed about the details. And as you can tell from earlier in the video, I tend to get stressed over small things. Some days I have the patience of a monk, and some days I have a freaking, I don't know, quarter-inch fuse, shorter than my cock. I don't know why my fuse is so short some days, and I don't know what exactly dictates it. It's just sometimes I'm really angry, sometimes I'm CEO Eric Hayden, but sometimes I'm just like chill. I don't know. It's all over the place. But either way, I used some electrical tape on the axle stubs to protect them from spatter because the bearings, the inner races are going to sit on that. That worked fine. The one bottom tube there's two of those. I flattened it out so I can get a good even weld on it. And then the top tube's pretty easy, straightforward. The axle is spaced back from the I don't know, the legs, I suppose I could say, because it would help spread the force out so that it would take less load from the wheels. When you're tipping it back, it's just going to be the weight of the chassis empty, like dry. I'm not going to move this around when it's full because it's an unstable design when it's full. But you can see when it's empty, it's very manageable. In fact, I don't even think I need to weld on a handle to it. Usually you'd have a handlebar of some sort on a wooden dolly or like a metal hand truck. This one you can just bear hug the propane tank on top, and that works fine. It's a real pain in the ass to lift this thing. I'm definitely going to be happy once it's done, although realistically I will have to take everything apart and then paint all of it, which is the least favorite step of any project I ever do. Right here I'm making some rubber legs. I think this was conveyor belt rubber. I forget where I got it, but it was given to me or I found it somewhere. I didn't pay for it, that's for sure. Never usually do. Here's the full machine. I like this view of it. It was actually pretty badass. It's too bad I had to mute the music. It had the Iron Man, Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath. It was kind of cool. My dad was playing it on the radio, and it was kind of interesting to have this little cinematography with that song. But, you know, we live in 1984, so I can't play some music in my video without all kinds of crap happening. So, anyways, no Iron Man for you. You just have to listen to it in your head, you know. Future Jacob here. For this part, I didn't have too much footage, so it'll be a little bit in and out. But what I was trying to do was go with this diagram, have an outlet going to the water separator filter. I'd have a mason jar rigged up as a sight glass, and then I'd have either a commercial sediment bowl filter or a homemade mason jar setup going to the outlet. In between, I'd have an inline filter, and then I'd have a mesh filter. Usually they're listed as oil filters for Sea-Doos and watercraft. I use them as a strainer filter before my paper filter. I find it helps to reduce clogging in this one. I can get more life out of it. Because this one, as long as you wash it out and everything, it's good for quite a long time. But anyways, it's going to come off the tank like this, go through this row of filters, and go there. That was the original idea, although I ended up changing it quite a bit, and you'll see why. This plastic that I'm using here for various components, it's HDPE, high density polyethylene. You can usually find it in industrial cutting boards, oil containers, milk jugs, laundry detergent containers, so on and so forth, like tougher plastic material. The reason I'm using it specifically, aside from being easy to work with and easy to find in sheets when you look for cutting boards at auctions, the main reason is that it's, from what I can tell, it's gasoline resistant. I've stored gasoline in all kinds of different plastic containers, and it tends to either bulge the plastic containers and kind of deform them, or it tends to degrade them. I had a machine built out of a water jug that would hold gasoline. It actually degraded it so intensely that it was about to like shatter and burst into pieces, which is no good. There's the mounting. I got a tab for the water separator filter, and then I actually just welded on a 1/4-inch T-fitting for the attachment for the little glass jar at the end there, at the end of the filter run. Now, the only credentials I have is a high school diploma. I haven't been to university, and I kind of scraped through high school due to issues with anxiety and all kinds of other crap. It kind of shows. If you look at that first sight glass, there's no way that is going to fill. If you think of the principle of a diving bell, it's the same kind of deal. There's air that's going to get compressed in there, and because the only way to get in there is to go up, the air is just going to stay in there. It's not able to escape. It can't go down through the gasoline. Considering that this was now about 3 or 4 a.m. at the time, I was pretty much staying up all night, and I really, really wanted this to work. I was very excited. So, anyways, I kind of just rigged it up again. This time I changed the design of that first sight glass jar so that it would actually fill properly. And then the water separator jar, the one on the right here that I'm fiddling with, I changed the design on that. Because the other issue was with the water separator jar, a lot of the fuel would just spill past it because all I had was a T. Whereas a real water separator will have a separate inlet and outlet. They are not connected because that way the fuel is forced to go through it and out of it and not just over it. So unfortunately, the mason jars didn't work how I wanted. I took the lid off of this one. They didn't quite seal under the pressure of the tank. They're holding water fine on their own, but once this thing was filled up with a bunch of gas, yeah, no, these started dripping pretty wildly. I put some anaerobic flange sealant on there just because it said it was rated for gas, but definitely not the right stuff. I didn't do it right anyways. Didn't hold. And then also, like, the mounting and the setup and everything, this was mounted like this, so once you started emptying it out, it wouldn't fully drain properly because there's a bump from, like there's a little bit of distance from the bottom up to the drainage hole. So it wouldn't fully drain itself of fuel, which is annoying. The water separator, quote unquote, jar that sits over here, that one worked and it actually sealed, but it's a pain because you got to drain it. And you can't drain it because there's no petcock on the bottom like an actual water separator. So you may be thinking, okay, stop being a dumbass, man. Just go to the store and get a water separator filter. I say, no, I'm going to continue being a dumbass. So anyways, I got a bunch of beer bottles and I started cutting them and learning how to cut them. At first I was using a little glass cutting wheel. Hell no, does not work. And then I figured out the trick, the solution. I just Googled a bunch of stuff, looked up some stuff on YouTube. Surprisingly, it actually works. This is a section of a Jones bottle, Jones soda. Unfortunately, it's not round. It's kind of round on this side, but you can't quite tell on camera. It's oval in cross-section, so it's not going to work for what I'm trying to do. What I ended up doing is I moved this mud shake bottle. These are nice and round, as we could see with this cut piece right here. So I cut off some pieces of this to test it and made a little prototype with some of these pucks here. And then I made 8 of these pucks. I'm going to have 4 different little reservoirs. That sits in there like that. I'm going to cut one that has both ends open like this. And then I'll have the 2 pieces like that. I made a prototype which displays this quite well, although I was using this with a sealed end, but it'll have both ends open, blah, blah, blah. To cut these, after messing around, like I was saying, I ended up going on YouTube and I looked up this channel. I think it was Maze DIY, Mazay DIY. And he had this design. I said, that makes sense. He had plans for it, but you had to do some bullshit to get them. I said no. So I ended up just building it based off of his video and just kind of guessed on the dimensions. It works okay. I don't like the design of this. There's a bit too much flex in there. So sometimes you can end up cutting spirals instead of cutting a proper, like a proper ring around the circumference. That's really frustrating. The mounting for the cutter, it's designed for a cutter with a round handle. I don't like the mounting. It's not very solid. And this cutter that I bought from the store, this new one, doesn't have a round handle. So I just cut the head off and then just screwed it onto here, and I enlarged the holes a bit. I'll probably put another screw in the future. But then again, I'll probably just remake this whole part of the assembly. The V-block part is nice. It's simple and it works. And at worst, if you don't have enough range here, you just put a block and it works pretty well. But anyways, I'll show you how I cut the bottles with this, and then I'll show you how I made these little pucks here. And then I'll show you how it's all going to come together and make my units that I need. I wasn't sure which of these two hole saws would cut it best. In the end, it turns out both of them cut it best. You need both. So I had to mute this part for copyright once again. My dad likes to play some cool music on the speaker. I'm glad he has great taste. It's too bad that YouTube doesn't allow it. We live in a society. Anyways, I chamfered the top hole on these, and then I actually just put them in the drill press vise and used that with the belts off to tap them. Makes life a lot easier. I just finished them by hand. Okay, so most of these are good. I got 4 of them cut. Looking good. Looking good. Looking good. However, this last one, I don't know if the camera will pick that up. There's a little bit of crap left over, and there's a very slight hairline crack that goes down a bit. There is going to be some pressure from the weight of the gasoline. We have about 200 pounds of fuel. I think it's like 100 liters or 120 liters. Sorry about the mix-up of imperial and metric. I'm Canadian. Anyways, I don't want that to crack. So I have another one because I sure like these little drinks, you know. They're so good. The artificial flavor. They don't show you how much sugar's in it, but you definitely know it's got hydrogenated palm kernel oil, dipotassium phosphate, mono, and diglycerides. And it's also got, let's see, high fructose corn syrup. You can't go wrong with a drink that has high fructose corn syrup. It's always good to have that, you know. A healthy, balanced diet of high fructose corn syrup is always good to have, you know. Keeps you in check. See, because I drink so much high fructose corn syrup, I can't even open it. There we go. Fix it. Now we just have to Have to sit down and have one of these quick. So unfortunately, we ran out of footage. That's the end of the video for today. Fortunately, I'm going to be making another one. I'm not sure when that'll be done, but hopefully soon. I got the glasses cut. There was a lot of broken ones. I got them all ready to go. I got 4 that'll work. I just got to sand them down by hand, which takes forever. And then I got to get some seals. I'll use some O-rings. It looks like O-rings will work. They'll go inside of the grooves that I cut in the HDPE circular pieces there. They'll just sit inside and then you just compress the glass into it. It seems to work fine. Once I get those going, I'll just have to use my fittings and plumb the 2 of them to make the fuel water separator jar that goes after all the filters, the one that connects to that metal T. And then I'll have to use 2 of them either horizontally or vertically to make the sight glass jar, the one that shows both the level of the tank as well as the quality of the fuel in the tank. I want to have good sight glasses. I actually went to the store and I bought a fuel water separator filter to try and just, cheap out. Not really, it was very expensive. It had a plastic bowl and the bowl was tinted. For me, I need to see the exact color and quality of the gas, so I need something glass, but I couldn't find anything at the store that was glass, and if I did, it was too expensive or it was too big. A lot of them are in 1-inch pipe fittings, while my system is 1/4 inch. I think the 1-inch pipe fittings are for like a big farm tank. But anyways, in part 2, I'll have it hopefully all done, and I'll be able to test it out and show you my methods of dealing with separating water, getting rid of sediment, looking at gas and determining what kind it is, if there's oil in it, if it's dyed fuel, so on and so forth. It'll come out in my next video, hopefully soon. Thanks for watching.